But thank you again for joining us for this presentation of a variety of project management tools. Heavy bias will be assumed as we go through this, but I will be sure to point out where my biases are. With that, I'll get started with our comparative analysis of project management information systems. When I say that we have a few tools that I would like to share with you, this is that list of tools. So I'm going to run through and give each one of these listed here a moment in the sun. I'll summarize with the comparative analysis. So basically looking at all of them at once based off of the same standard set of criteria, and then a conclusion, and then we can open up the floor for those questions and answers. Another thing that I'll point out is this presentation is meant to be interactive. So once this session is done and we are able to share the presentation out with you, I do encourage you, if you have an interest in any of these, to click on the links that are built into the slides to kind of review and dive in a little deeper. So with that, I'll get us started. All right. So why are project management tools important? They help us support a variety of different types of projects in different ways. They basically keep information centralized and organized so that we can communicate properly and effectively, monitor the progress of our projects, and report out what we're doing. Each one of these will have their own pros and cons. So I'll make sure that I highlight those for each moment in the sun. And then a little bit about what makes them special or unique or different, or however we want to look at that. Oh, I can click over here. Cool. So back to our list of project management information systems. I'll also have a few honorable mentions here. I also have a list of criteria that will be viewing that list of systems against. So basically an overview of each tool, some highlights on those key features, some recommendations on when it's best to use this one versus another, the basic pros and cons, and some use cases again. With that, we'll get started on our first of these tools, which is Jira. So Jira is brought to us by Atlassian. This is a very robust tool. It's highly customizable. However, it does have a steep learning curve to the point where they have their own coding language, JQL, if you want to set up queries and things of that nature. It's very scalable. Because it's customizable, there are also several integrations so that it can plug into other systems. When I say other systems, for a project management tool like Jira, we can connect to something like grow.com or Power BI to do more extensive reporting, and we can refine specific custom fields on each individual Kanban card. To do that, Jira is highly flexible, highly customizable, but it is very cumbersome. Another thing about Jira is that because it's part of that Atlassian suite, it does integrate well with other Atlassian tools. So this includes things like Confluence, which is a wiki-style knowledge-based building tool. And what we're looking at now is a full screen view of what a project manager would see if they were using Jira to manage an Agile project. So something with a backlog, you're talking about sprints. However, if you have a known process and you wanted to run a Waterfall project, Jira does have the flexibility to kind of support both of these and any kind of hybrid in between. So that's our big picture view of Jira. And again, if you're interacting with these slides later, there will be a link at the bottom of the slides to land you on that front page where you could start your own version of a free account to kind of dive deeper into the tool. I wouldn't recommend that though, Jira specifically, because Atlassian has a smaller bite if you wanted to use an Atlassian tool to manage your personal projects, and that's Trello. So Trello is a lot more user-friendly. It's a lot less cumbersome. It doesn't scale as well to that enterprise level that Jira tends to serve. So if you're talking about a small business, but you were looking for something that can do what Jira does, Trello might be the right fit cost-wise and ease of use-wise. This tool is great for when your stakeholders for a project are not necessarily project management experts themselves, but they do need to interact with your project work. They do need to move something from the to-do to the doing to the done column. This is a good entry-level project management tool when your audience is not as sophisticated as a group that would use something like Jira. So here's a bigger picture view. Trello is just visually dazzling. It does allow to present a lot of information. These cards, this workflow, any of this is customizable, so you can show what stakeholders are tagged on a project, how many tasks are done versus left on your checklist, how many attachments are there. You can see due dates. You can customize it to show or hide any of these points of information to organize your work. So moving on to Asana. So outside of the Atlassian world, Asana is actually brought to us by the same people that bring us Facebook, Meta. So if you wanted a tool that is all about collaboration and who's on your project, this does feel like it belongs in Facebook's world, but it's Facebook's take on Trello. So that same easy to digest, easy to understand visual look and feel is present with Asana that you would get with Trello. One of the things that I love the most about Asana is that they have templates that you can use to customize what you want to share. So for instance, when I wanted to create project documentation using Asana, what I did was they have a template for status report. So for my status report, I got to pick from a list of components and choose whether I wanted an executive summary at the top or my milestones at the top, whether I wanted to include what kind of information. And it was very easy for me to build those reports out in Asana. The experience that I'm referring back to for my past work life, working with a startup, I was able to reduce their tech stack by 50% by doing an analysis of these project management tools. Basically, I created the same project and controlled it for a month in each of these tools simultaneously so that I could compare apples to apples in some kind of way. And what stood out for me the most during that exercise was that Asana was the easiest to build up those reports because you could drag and drop your components. And then once you had those components in your little template, you could go back again and it would prompt you, okay, this is an executive summary. So in 3 to 4 sentences, can you tell me what the value of this project will deliver? What's the goal? What are you guys up to? So I enjoyed that a great deal. On to our next one, we have Basecamp. So Basecamp is the most social media-like of any of these project management tools. This actually, I feel like it would be a little difficult to stick to the Kanban table if that's what you were trying to use to drive a project. However, if you have a lot of stakeholders across a variety of different domains and they all have some kind of say or some kind of feedback or contribution to the project, this is a good place to have that social media style forum. However, for that reason, I'm not sure that I personally think Basecamp scales well because basically the more stakeholders that you're adding to an environment like this, the more like your own personal social media platform it seems to become. However, in smaller bites, it's very digestible, very user-friendly, but this is kind of what that homepage becomes after you add a few stakeholders and a few different things in. So it is very good for when you're managing stakeholders across a variety of fields, but maybe not the best if you have a very straightforward, repeatable process, or even if you have something that's agile, but you don't want this many cooks in the kitchen. Moving on to Notion. I think that Notion is a great agile project management tool. However, I think that its greatest strength is actually not the project management service that it provides. I think Notion is great to compete with something like Confluence in Atlassian's world, which is a wiki knowledge base builder. So for their documentation, all of their docs, it's very easy to build interactive, comprehensive documentation with links to specific tasks or tagging specific people or calling in parts of the project, for instance, a checklist from a specific task somewhere else. This tool is very powerful in that way. So if you're running meetings and you want to quickly have a on-screen note session with all kinds of links in it, Notion will get that done. But it doesn't integrate as well as some of the other tools with other things that project managers would use, like Gmail and Slack and GitHub and whatever else you'd be looking at. So I think as far as a project management tool, it has its strengths, but really it's not for running the project, in my opinion. So just to show you guys a big view, it does have a Kanban board. It is visually similar to something like the Trello, the Asana kind of boards, but the customizations, the automations that you could build into this Kanban board don't stack up to what's available in Trello and Asana, for example, based off of what we've seen so far. So moving away from Notion into Smartsheet. Smartsheet has a completely different look and feel. So instead of starting with a Kanban and kind of assuming that what you're working on is going to be super agile, Smartsheet is able to serve the audience that's comfortable using Microsoft Project or is just very comfortable using spreadsheets, Excel-based documentation. While they do have amazing dashboards, let me say that differently. While they also have the capability for serving Kanban boards, in my opinion, what will attract somebody to something like Smartsheet is the ability to use the dashboards and the reporting. But again, this is for someone who has a strength in Excel. So there is a bit of a learning curve, but I'm not sure that it's that steep. It's not the same as having to get a JIRA certification. So this is something like what a Smartsheet project plan might look like. Very similar to Microsoft Excel or MS Project. It does have that capability of attaching things in. You can do a lot of formatting. It'll give you a good Gantt chart. But this is very waterfall friendly, maybe even hybrid. But if you were doing strictly agile sprints, that kind of thing, this may not serve you as well. I could be wrong, but I think that this is a great example for a waterfall tool. Alrighty, moving back into something that is more agile than anything else, we have Monday.com. Monday.com is one of those easy to digest if your audience is not strong in project management kind of tools, especially if what you're working on is something agile. We can quickly move from, it easily allows us to report as we're moving from the doing to the done to what's in the backlog, all those kinds of things. It is flexible in that way. However, the thing with Monday is most of the features are behind that paywall. So depending on what tier you're signed up for, you may or may not have the ease of doing some of the things that they advertise. For example, the more you include stakeholders that are not part of your own organization, where a tool like Basecamp will easily allow for that without changing the price, you would expect a cost difference to do something similar for Monday.com. So that's kind of the differentiator between those two. But Monday is a little bit easier to visually digest because of that cleaner interface versus what you would see on your Basecamp landing page. So this is that view of a Monday.com main page. And then our trusty dusty industry standard of Microsoft Project Management. I could say a lot about this. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. This is kind of our industry standard. What they've done recently is, if you're not aware that there's a cloud-based version of this, it exists, it's out there. This is I consider this one to have a very steep learning curve. However, because it's kind of the industry standard, I'm pretty sure a lot of us on the call have some level of familiarity with it. If not, the thing about Microsoft Project is that it's very expensive. If you're not on the enterprise level and looking to make a serious investment in this specific tool for whatever reason, I think even trying to get the training to understand a little bit more about the tool is a little cost prohibitive. However, if your organization supports it, this is a very robust tool for both Agile, hybrid, Waterfall projects. It's tried and true. So just to show us a zoom in version of Microsoft Project, why I mentioned that if you're familiar with Microsoft Project, Smartsheets might be for you. Visually, they're very similar. Smartsheets, because it is more cloud-based, will have those attached features that are a little bit easier to access than how intuitive Microsoft Project may be. But visually, they are pretty similar, and I think people use them in similar ways. What may be different is the cost of entry. Next on the list, we have PlanView. This also shares that look and feel for Microsoft Project and Smartsheets. While PlanView is a robust project management tool, I think that its ultimate strength here is that it is a very robust resource capacity planning tool. I have the least experience with PlanView of all the tools listed on this presentation, but from what I've seen so far, the ability to report in real time your resource capacity is, I haven't seen too many tools that can compare to it. And it is robust in that it works on an enterprise level. However, it might, for that reason, be in the same lane as Microsoft Project, where the cost of entry to even do training is behind that enterprise level paywall. So just to kind of show you guys visually what a project plan might look like in PlanView. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, this is so blurry. But this does have that same look and feel for Smartsheets or Microsoft Project, where we have our tasks, our Gantt chart. What PlanView does really well, I'm not sure how well I can share it here with this blurry slide. I'll make sure that I switch this out before we share the presentation out. But it is very powerful in showing that resource allocation. So someone has been allocated to the project, and then they've been approved by their resource manager for this many hours, and then you go through and you apply that many hours to each task, and based off of what date they're being applied to, in real time, that resource manager can see and approve or decline or adjust or have conversations. So this tool is great for doing things like that. And last but not least, this is the speaker bias favorite. So back to that exercise that I did at my startup to kind of go through what project management tools could be right for our organization. During my analysis, when we selected ClickUp, we basically cut our tech stack in half because of how robust the feature set is in ClickUp. To be specific, at that startup company, we had tools in our tech stack that were redundant. So we also had Asana and Trello and Jira. For company reasons, we couldn't get rid of Jira, but we were able to swap out Asana and Trello for ClickUp because different teams were using these different tools in different ways. Additionally, we had a tool called Loom. Loom, like what a Weaver would use, LOOM, allows a user to record on screen while also giving a voiceover and showing their click pattern so they can communicate online how to navigate somewhere within a SaaS tool, for instance. ClickUp has that capability built in. They also have the ability to, a few of the other ones also have this ability to do time tracking. However, I think ClickUp integrates it the best. So you can click your start timer, logging into a task, and click your stop timer, and now ClickUp knows that you've been working on this task for an hour. It does also do that real-time resource reporting to show that if I've logged an hour of time across a task, it'll show up in all those dashboards to say, and here's that hour, she was working on this task. It also allows for those collaboration features, such as being able to visually see who is assigned to what kind of task, and also supporting that feature of Notion, where if you're having a team meeting and you don't want to navigate outside of the tool, but you want to have meeting minutes, you can take those on-screen meeting minutes in ClickUp and link that doc to the task native to the tool in that same way that you can pull in elements such as a task list from this task, or pull in a link to another document from a previous meeting, or tag a person in this document so they can come back later and add additional notes. It also has comparable, if not better, formatting features for that documentation to what Notion offers. ClickUp does a lot. I think that even if you're using it strictly for Waterfall, it has the ability to create templates and then do that repeatable work over and over. It has a lot of folder hierarchy organization, which I also love. And then, okay, two of my last favorite features before I just go off on all kinds of tangents. One of them is that whiteboard feature built in. So if you're comfortable with Miro and that's how you'd want to take notes, you don't have to use a document like I just recommended. You could do all that again in their whiteboard style tool. And then also the ability to report on goals. So if you have company level OKRs, objective key results, or management by objectives, or key performance indicators, or whatever terminology you're comfortable using, if they're set at that company-wide enterprise level, you can navigate down to individual checklists that are built into subtasks. And as these checklists are marked complete, it'll roll up to show how close we are to completing that goal on that dashboard enterprise level. Actually, full disclosure, when I was studying for my PMP, I used ClickUp to manage my thoughts and class notes and measured my progress towards that goal using their dashboard. So again, that's hometown fave. There's a very heavy bias there, which is why I'm going to click away and get on to our next slide, which is where we want to compare that full list of all the tools that we just referred to. ClickUp does everything. One more thing it does is it integrates well with all kinds of other tools, highly customizable, how you notify, how you report back, very granular level of control is available in that tool. So on to our comparative analysis, the criteria that I'm using to compare all of these tools against each other, how easy they are to use, how easy it is to work with project stakeholders using this tool, how well it is to capture that in-app documentation as opposed to navigating away to a separate tool for meeting minutes or whiteboard brainstorming, how easy it is to customize or flex to meet your organization, your project needs, how well it integrates with other tools. And again, when I say integrating with other tools, I'm not just talking specifically about communication tools or reporting tools. What we're looking for is that variety. Does it work well with any of those options? Is it missing one of the standards? We're also measuring the changelog. Oh, I just clicked, sorry. How easy it is to, looking at the changelog, how easy it is to capture when things occur, when a task has been moved from complete to, or from in progress to complete. And then the last thing that was there was cost, but I don't want to mess with the presentation by clicking back and changing the animation, so I apologize. This red, amber, green is just to decode our comparative analysis, which will come next, using our PMP standards. So we're red, amber, green. Green will mean that it's meeting all the criteria. There's no red flags. Everything that we're looking for is present with this tool. If it's amber, it's probably halfway in between having everything that you would want and for some reason not being eligible for consideration. If something is red on this comparative analysis chart, that means there are better options. It's either, we're talking about something like cost, maybe the costs are prohibitive. So that's why it would appear red on this chart. So with that decoder ring in place, this is that comparative analysis. So this is a lot to look at. I kind of want to take my time and help us decode what it is that we're seeing. So when we review each of these tools against each other, I'm going to go by the columns to show what function. So when we're reviewing the ease of use, for example, the ones that are in green, Trello, Asana, ClickUp, Basecamp, Monday, very low learning curve. These are something that anyone can take a few hours, take a day or two, and have enough information to do what they want. They're fairly intuitive systems. Jira, there are certifications that you can take to fully understand how to administer Jira as a project manager. PlanView also, this might be a personal bias, but I find the learning curve to be pretty steep here. And Microsoft Project, the learning curve is steep, but because it's an industry standard, once you get past it, it does help to decode a lot of what you're expecting in any of these other tools. So that's how we're measuring that ease of use. For collaboration features, a lot of these tools do pretty good with collaboration. The ones that don't seem to make it as easy to pull someone in and show them what you're seeing without using a separate tool are PlanView and Microsoft Project. The reason I say that for Microsoft Project specifically is because of that cost prohibitive licensing. So even if you have a dazzling Gantt chart project plan, if you want to share that with someone that is in your organization even and doesn't have that Microsoft Project license, what you'll end up doing is taking a screenshot, saving it as a PDF so that you can share that plan with them because they won't be able to access it in the same way that you can. PlanView has something similar going on there, so that's why they're also low on the list for collaboration features. For in-app documentation, I'm being specific about that use case where if you wanted to have a team meeting about a project, so now you're on that specific Kanban board or maybe that specific task, and now wanted to document some additional notes about all that, ClickUp, Basecamp, Notion, and Monday will allow you to do that without navigating away from the app. A few of these others don't make it as easy. Sorry. All right, on to flexibility, customization. A lot of them are fairly flexible. The ones that I'll call out as being less so would be Basecamp and Notion. This is basically because they have a small set of features, so there's just not too much that's available to be customized. Monday, very straightforward interface. So again, there's just not much available to customize there. And Microsoft Project and PlanView, there are just so many customizations that it can be overwhelming because they're not all necessarily intuitive. As far as integrating, a lot of these do integrate well with a lot of other SaaS tools, a lot of other on-prem or like tools that you would in the olden days use a CD to load onto your computer, those kinds of apps, so that you can communicate outside of the project with those tools. As far as change logs, some of these don't make it as easy to see, but all of these, because they're SaaS products, do have some level of audited trail to see who did what within your system. I kind of want to read these two in a pair. I'll start with cost first and then come back to scalability, because for some of these, cost is why they're not as scalable as they could be. For cost, basically what I did was a lot of these have multiple tiers for membership or for subscription levels. They generally all have a free for one user kind of account that you can set up. If that first tier of subscription was under $10, then this cost box would be marked green. If it was between $10 and $15, that would mark it yellow. And then if it was beyond that, it would be marked red. Another specific call out is that Microsoft Project has an on-prem, the CD-ROM version, in addition to the cloud version. For that on-prem version, there's not a $10 a month per user, $15 a month per user fee. It's a flat rate of, I think it was $799 per user that you pay the one time, but still that's the cost. It's not $15 a month, $25 a month. It's all the way up there. And then back to scalability. While Jira is very scalable, very customizable, it's meant to be on that enterprise level, the cost might scare people away. Whereas Trello is not as scalable, but the cost might be the reason that someone would stick with it. Asana, for what it offers, there are other tools that do the same thing for a better price point, which is why that one in combination doesn't look so good. ClickUp, during that comparison that I did for my startup organization, was, not to call them the cheapest, it was the least costly of all the options because the feature set was quite robust considering what the cost was. I mean, those are the kind of major calls that I want to pull forward. Project and PlanView live on an enterprise level, so scalability is always there. And Smartsheets does seem to scale pretty well. You can work on a small team level and also use this for an enterprise level work. So that's our comparative analysis. And with that, we have gone through our whole list. So just to show some of those examples from that comparative analysis, I'm not sure if I can remember now, but this is an audit trail. It looks like it's from Trello, if I'm guessing, but I'm guessing. This is for sure Notion, showing that in-app documentation feature and some of the built-in functionality that comes with the documentation feature that is native to this app. I think this is talking about scalability and collaboration, just how many people you can add without having to change your subscription level. Basecamp is pretty good about this. And then integration. So again, across the board, not just communication tools like email and Slack, or development tools like GitHub, but also being able to integrate with your calendar to say that we're going to block off these 4 hours for this task, and even into some automation kind of tools. How well does it integrate across the board with things like this, with reporting tools? That was the criteria for measuring integration. And then looking on to some of the automations. When I say automation, a few things are possible, but just to give us a context of what kind of scale we're talking about, back to Jira being very particular, and you can be certified in JQL. For their automations, you're basically using that SQL style JQL coding to build out your queries or customizations. Tools like Asana are a little bit more intuitive with that citizen coder style of, if this condition is true, then take this action. Jira does have a way to do this, but it tends to be easier to manipulate in that broken down JQL form. So they're trying, but it's just not easy. I think this is also part of the Jira automation workflow. So just to show that there are a few different ways to capture automation, some are a little bit easier than others to accomplish. And then I also wanted to make an honorable mention for some collaboration tools, because as project managers, communication is the name of the game. The better we can communicate about our project, the better we can engage with our stakeholders. So some of our honorable mentions are Slack. Slack is actually an acronym for Searchable Log of All Company Knowledge, and that's basically how it functions. It's instant messaging chat tool, but it has a robust capability for being able to search back and use that for documentation, backing up things. I don't know. It also integrates well with a lot of tools. So this is actually showing that you can launch a Jira sequence in Slack by saying the specific keyword, which might be ticket in this case. For us, we had to use an actual icon of a ticket, like a movie ticket, to initiate that flow. The last time I saw this. Another tool that could be on your radar is Kahoot. This actually might exist past a paywall. So the specific use case here is if you're trying to engage your audience and kind of quiz their knowledge, you can build out quizzes and have them interact in real time, logging in with their phone to give you that quick answer. So this is also a good way to survey or poll the crowd. This one here is Calendly. So Calendly uses AI to help you organize your calendar. When this is implemented on an enterprise level, what it can do is, if you have standing meetings that occur every Tuesday at 4 p.m. week over week with your boss, your weekly one-on-ones, but this week coming up is super hectic and there is more time on Wednesday for that meeting than on Tuesday, Calendly's AI will slide that recurring Tuesday meeting to that more empty Tuesday or Wednesday slot so that you can have a manageable calendar, basically. It also has a feature that allows you to say, hey guys, book time on my calendar. This is my available window. These are the slots that you can pick. So if you want AI to help with your calendar, please look to Calendly. And then there's also Miro. Miro, this feature is captured in what ClickUp does, in that we have the ability to use a whiteboard, collaborate, change things in real time. And then lastly, Figma. Briefly, if what you're doing is developing for someone to have a user interface, a UI, that needs to be edited or changed, or you want to do a mock-up of what your website's going to look like in a future state or whatever that is, Figma is a great tool for doing that mock-up and being able to communicate specifically that very clearly if you want to see what a website looks like, because Figma will allow you to toggle between the mobile screen view versus the desktop view so that you can see how things change when your aspect ratio changes. Alrighty. So thank you guys so much for sticking through this. I have a few things to bring this to a conclusion. So briefly, just to look back at our list of tools that we reviewed, we have Jira, Trello, ClickUp, Asana, Basecamp, Notion, Smartsheets, Monday.com, Project, and PlanView. The order that I shared them within is a little different, but those are the tools. We also had some honorable mentions. And what goes into selecting the right project management tool for the job? I think that the most important thing is to already consider the way of working for the team that exists. So if you already have a team in place, you already know what kind of project you need to manage, whether it's a waterfall, hybrid, or agile. The most important thing to consider at that point is, how does the team work? Will they benefit from a very easy, digestible user interface where all they need to see is whether something is green or red? Do they want to have a customizable interface where they can see the whole workflow on a Kanban style board? Is this a repeatable process? Do we need to have a way to archive our lessons learned and pull this back up and tie it into future iterations? How you guys are working, I think, is an important consideration that'll help differentiate between which tool would make the most sense. So making sure that you're evaluating the requirements of the project management team. Is it reporting? Is it documentation? What is it that they want to see? And which tool can best serve that need? Also considering scalability. If this is a concern, that we're starting off small, but you have a need to, maybe that's a small business, but it's growing. Maybe you're rolling up into a different initiative. If there's a need for scalability and customization on different levels from where you start, it's a little bit easier to start within a native tool than to integrate sometimes. However, one of the other integration considerations that I made was, how easy is it to have a Microsoft project and integrate it into Jira or ClickUp or Trello? How much of your information is mappable into this new format, and how much of it would be lost in that conversion? So integration is something to consider. If you're curious about any of these tools, the links at the bottom of the Zoom in slides will land you at whatever their version of the free trial demo, compare our tool to other tools, whatever version of that exists, that's where you should be linking to. And I encourage you to, if you're interested, pick one of these tools, start a free trial, try to use it to manage a simple project or just to see what all the features are. I think that there is a wealth of knowledge that can be gained with some of the free trials and then some of the training. So a lot of training may exist behind a paywall, but Asana, ClickUp, a lot of tools are very good for providing that documentation to users ahead of time. Basecamp also has a lot of learnings and trainings that you can garner without starting a free trial. And then my last recommendation here is, let's continue to build this community, and let's ask around, let's share our good ideas, and take that feedback from project managers that have used ClickUp if that's what you're moving to, or Jira if that's what you wanted to do. So things that they all have in common, most of them are pretty good with Agile, hybrid, waterfall projects. Some of them may lose a little data in the waterfall instance, but they can all generally support Agile the best. I think all of these tools, what they provide is an ability to communicate about the project. However, how they do that is a little different. If what you're looking for is something data heavy, you're probably looking for something like a Smartsheets where you can look at those dashboards. ClickUp, again, does have that dashboard feature built in. Asana does also have the ability to roll progress up into a high-level version of tasks. But if what you're looking for is documentation, lessons learned, and having a knowledge base, then there are tools that support that a little bit better. I will go back to ClickUp, but Notion is also fairly good at managing something like that, along with both Jira and Trello, just because they are part of that Atlassian suite, in which case Confluence is the tool of choice there. So just what you're using the tool for as far as communication and reporting, and then what additional features are important to you. For me, when I had no choice but to use Asana, what I made peace with was that their templates are the best by far. The ability to build a template, if you're not quite sure what goes into a status report, it'll give you that list of components. You only have like 6 options to choose from. So really what you're picking is what to leave out and what order to put them in. And then once you pick those components, it'll prompt you again. So if this is your milestone chart, what are your goals? What are your deliverables? If this is that executive summary, what is that elevator pitch, 3-sentence explanation of what this project does? So it's really good at walking you through. So again, Asana might be a good one for someone who is maybe project agnostic or not too strong in their project management comfort, because it does allow you to build that comfort and that confidence up by hand-holding you and walking you through the steps. Sorry, but my bias is heavy. I will say that ClickUp also has great trainings in a variety of ways to kind of bring you up to that same speed, but I'll stop talking about them because they're honestly not paying me to do so. It's just I have a heavy bias because of how rich the feature set was. So with that, we're finally at the moment we've been waiting for. I have been trying to monitor the chat, but luckily I have a team to support me here. I'm going to pause for a minute because this is our question and answer session.
Thank you so much, Khadija. This was a great, I know a lot of information that was shared, but I really appreciate you from taking the time to just go through each tool. So we will open the floor. Please feel free, if you'd like to take yourself off mute, raise your hand or put your question in the chat. There was one question from Mary this afternoon that asks, can you take a task and ClickUp automatically create or update a calendar reminder?
Yes, that's actually how I use ClickUp personally, is if I have tasks that I want to block time for, I make sure that I put my start and end dates in ClickUp, and in that way it blocks time off on my Google Calendar for me. I think that there are also a variety of calendar views available from memory. Jira, Asana, Basecamp, I'm not sure about Monday, and ClickUp for sure all have calendar views. So you can build something out in a list view or a Kanban view even, and then just toggle to the calendar view to see where all those tasks fall. Not quite like a Gantt chart, but in that calendar view. All these also have that Gantt chart view available, but I like the additional calendar view.
And like you made a great point when you were showing like the difference in the cost for each of the tools, because I know for me, like I said, my company uses Smartsheets, but I do know there's a heavy cost to have a license, and because of that, my enterprise company is very limited on how many licenses they purchase and share. So usually with me, or the way it works is you can. The functionality of Smartsheets is it's simple without necessarily having the license, but then you're limited on certain functionality. So normally, they'll tell you to start off as like a free user. And then of course, obviously when you have to go to a high level, when you start using the formulas to create your dashboards, then you have to kind of work with other people who have the license, especially like if you're sharing like information with those in the company and outside the company. But it is a great tool. And I was just expressing to Patricia in the chat that I recently came across ClickUp, which I haven't gone as deep as you have, but I was internshipping at a tech company that shifted from managing their project plan from Trello into ClickUp, and it was a great game changer. And what I loved about it was that I was helping them with stakeholder management and how they were managing their initiatives. I saw that it was a more ease of access and how they were managing and making sure they were keeping track of initiatives. And what was even more fun to do is we started using the sprint functionality in ClickUp and making sure to keep up with their tasks that way. So I thought that was really nice. And I love the Kanban view as well.
Yes, I think that's one of the cool things about a lot of the SaaS. So SaaS is software as a service. So a lot of the SaaS internet-based project management tools, I like that they have a variety of views. Even if you're only comfortable with starting off with that list view that looks like Microsoft Project, like Smartsheets or Plan View, and then just toggling the view, I like that the variety exists. And then also to your point about scalability, with having to mix and match, this is also true. We had this pain with Asana where we were using it as a company, and we were trying to do additional customizations a little bit more than the basic. So we paid for a few licenses for a few people to be that power user administrator level. But then as we continued to scale, the only option that made sense was to then convert everything to the enterprise level. But when we tried to convert to the enterprise level, Asana was just cost prohibitive, because if we're going to use a tool like this, Asana is the most expensive one of the ones we considered. Let's just stick with Trello because we were already a Jira shop, or let's upgrade to ClickUp because it was cheaper than both Jira and Asana, and had more features. So it was able to reduce the tech stack ultimately.
Thanks. Okay. Is anyone else on the call have any questions or any asks for Khadija on the tools that were shared for this evening? Like I said, feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute.
I see a comment from Patricia that Smartsheet, you do need a license to create dashboards, right? So to be that power user, that is going to be behind a paywall.
Hi, this is Sharon. I do have a question.
Hi, Sharon.
So I was trying to get us. Oh, hi. Thanks. I just wanted to get a sense. Maybe you have any suggestions. What tool of those tools you presented, which one do you believe is best for managing the project schedule, whether it's Agile or Waterfall, as well as an issues list? Because there's always a lot of issues, and today we're tracking everything in Excel, right? Um, I'm just wondering if you find any tool, any one of those tools better than, which may be better than one, what's your thought there?
Thanks for your question, Sherry-Ann. I have a very heavy bias, so I'll give you a variety because ClickUp's on the list. If you're talking about having that issue log, the risk log, the reason that I'm gravitating to ClickUp first is because you can document that issue log. If you're using, you could integrate with Excel or Google Sheets, or you could have a spreadsheet, a table in a ClickUp document, and you can tie it, you can attach it to a task. You could also do something like this in Jira, Trello, Asana. In all three of these, Jira, I feel like that might be the hardest of those three because it's so complicated. So to get what you want, you'd have to get that. There's a certification I have. It's JCP 640 or something like that to be a Jira administrator. It would take like that level of product knowledge to get what you want out of there. Whereas something like ClickUp, Asana, Trello would allow you to easily toggle. So you could have your tasks listed, have them on a Kanban board, and then as long as you have dates associated with those tasks, it's at the top of any of those screens, but you would toggle the view to go from Kanban view, list view, onto calendar view. And that calendar view, either by blocking off days or hours of time within a day, will show you where your plan lays out, in addition to everyone having Gantt chart capabilities.
Got it. And this would be kind of dependent from your regular project schedule, right? I just want to make sure I'm here. I don't know if I'm clear on that, but again,
right.
All these issues that's outside.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, for instance, with ClickUp, when I say like the calendar view, why I use the calendar view is because if that calendar, for me personally, I use ClickUp and it's integrated with my personal Gmail calendar, which includes like my whatever else is on my calendar that I need to keep on my radar. So for instance, next week, Thursday, I have blocked off the end of year gala for that period of time. So if I'm looking at my calendar view and ClickUp and I wanted to say, I need to reorganize my bookshelf, I would see on my calendar view that I can't use Thursday at 7 p.m. because I have an engagement already. Is that what you're trying to get at? Project schedule versus an actual calendar?
Yeah, it's a little bit more, and I guess I think what you're saying, and I guess it's something I'm going to have to kind of think outside of the box, because again, if you have tasks or if you have issues, these issues would be tied to a calendar, a scheduled, more or less, right? Not the project schedule, but it's just like the task list, and they have to be done by a certain time. So I'm thinking I just have to somehow think outside the box and make it all.
I misunderstood your question originally, but if you're talking about those issues like bug fixes, then I do kind of lean back on Jira. While it does take a level of customization, you can have your backlog, your sprints, and then separately have bugs and issues that you tie to task. And those issues will have separate due dates from the task, so they can be due before the task can be closed. And you can separately assign those issues to like a developer for resolution as opposed to whoever else was in charge of the rest of the task. If that's more in line what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then, Jira, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And Corey, I see your hand up, but there was a comment that was put in the chat from Marcus. So let me just ask that question to Khadijah, and then I'll follow up with you next, Corey. Marcus put in the chat, I've seen a lot ClickUp in my social media ads. How do you compare it to Asana?
I would say it's comparable to Asana as far as like ease of use and how easy it is to like get started. So for instance, if you have, a Microsoft project or even a Jira project plan, both can easily be imported into ClickUp to kind of get started. Same thing with Asana. What I think differentiates it is, number one, the scalability for the cost. You'll end up spending more the more users you want to have access to like advanced features in Asana than you would for ClickUp. And number two, ClickUp just has additional features. So Asana doesn't have that ability to do that Loom recording. But if you don't have a need to show somebody how to click, where to click to get through something, then you might not be worried about something like that. I'm not sure that Asana has as robust of a whiteboard feature while it's present. ClickUp has a lot more templates there. So that's what I'm saying. It's a matter of your way of working, whatever that preference is, whatever that second most important thing is, once you've gotten past that first hurdle.
Okay, thank you. You also use it Smartsheet for issue log and risk log.
Right, because it's table based, so it's easy to say, this is the issue, this is the date it's due, this is the resolution, this is who it's assigned to, and here are the attached documentation that you need. And you Correct. Can format it, make it stand out against the rest of the Smartsheet.
All right, thank you for the question, Marcus. Corey, go ahead.
Great job, Khadijah and Katima. I do have a question. Are any of these information systems integrating AI? And I'm going to go down the path of user stories in their platform. If I'm thinking about a user story and I have all these cases, are they integrating in AI in a way that, okay, we have a baseline. Yeah, we've got 10 user stories, right? Can they help us develop them and then actually integrate them with the project in the format and fashion of where they would appear during an Agile project? I'm talking Agile.
Yes, I want to make sure that I confirm that list appropriately, but as I was building this presentation, I did see a lot more of that. A lot of them are, it's either on their product roadmap or it already is implemented. Sorry guys about the bias, but I know for sure that ClickUp, I've been investigating their ability to use AI, but they're not the only ones. It's not the only place I've seen it. I'm just not confident if I'm saying that it is Asana, but I'm pretty sure that Asana is also in that lane of, hey, I have a user story and I have a functionality, I have something that I want to see. Can you help me break this down into user stories? I think that for sure, Asana and ClickUp have that ability, but I think there are a few others that I can put on that list, Corey. So before we share the presentation, those are my 2 notes to add in that AI capability because it is starting to show up. Also, one of the honorable mentions that I didn't make earlier, speaking of AI, Grammarly is a tool that I use for like proofreading. However, they have been working well or extensively with the ChatGPT-4, what is that, generative AI model. So I think it's a little bit more feature rich on the paid version, but for Grammarly, if you're using the paid version, you can give it a prompt and it'll change your style in the same way that ChatGPT 3 or 4 will. So for instance, you can say, hey, we're having a end of year gala to celebrate our project management South Florida chapter. Can you help us design an event flyer? Can you help us come up with the advertisement verbiage? And then you can go back to Grammarly and say, can you make it sound more urgent or more convincing, more jovial, whatever that word is, and it'll change that formatting for you. What I like about Grammarly is that it also calls you out. So if you allow it to do the error checking while you're typing, it'll say, hey, this sounds very not confident. Are you sure you're sounding like a professional right now? Let me make some suggestions. Stop using like, and it'll go through and delete all those words that are making you sound less assertive, less informative, less business appropriate in how you're speaking.
That is awesome, because I use Grammarly on my phone, but I never thought about going at that extensive. So that's really good to hear. I have to look into that.
AI is the future. We need to all be asking what it can do for you. So
there was another question to chat from Christopher. He said, in your opinion, which one of the PMIS apps provides the best means of managing a huge amount of documents for document control?
I'm going to gravitate toward Notion first, but it depends on if it's literally just documentation. Notion only because it is the only project management information system listed with a heavy focus on documentation. However, I do also want to gravitate towards the Atlassian suite because Confluence, I think that's the industry standard for technical documentation and knowledge-based building. And that's part of the Atlassian suite. So Jira and Trello have automatic integrations into that Confluence suite. ClickUp does have documentation capabilities as well. But if it's document heavy and that's the only thing you're using it for, then you're safe with Notion.
Okay. Anyone else like to come off mute and ask a question or put a question in the chat for Khadijah?
I'll just make a comment, Khadijah. I'd like you to think about, because you're very familiar with our chapter, obviously, and the different teams and the purpose of each team. And you know, as well as I do, that we are using multiple platforms. And I think one of the main reasons is because, well, obviously cost, right? The second thing is functionality. Can we all, we've got 7 teams. Is it possible to get the features and the functions that we need to streamline all of our processes and everything? And that is governance is part of that, document control. But I just want food for thought as we go into next year. Just think about what we all do, and maybe we can have a one-on-one with that between us and the other VPs, right? So that you understand what everyone needs to do in order to effectively and efficiently perform better. So that
absolutely. Not only what every group or team needs to do, like what tools are important to them, but as a chapter, what kind of way of reporting we want to see back out of it. How do we know, like, for instance, if someone doesn't want a checklist or a Kanban chart, if you guys still need to report progress, if there's a way to capture it and still be able to share that out using that same self-contained platform. But I'm going to start with ClickUp, and then you guys will have to talk me down from my ledge.
No, we can. No. What did I say? No, I like that because I mean we're smart sheet. We just going into 2024, right? Streamline. But let's get together and talk about that with the other VPs.
Absolutely, here for it. For me, the reason I'm such an advocate for ClickUp is truly it was the cost and the functionality. The environment that I was working in when we were comparing all these tools initially for me, we were already using Jira, Trello, and Asana. And I personally, on the side, happen to be using ClickUp. And I happened to throw it in the mix to see if it could stand up to some of these other tools. And it actually won our competition because it was able to do all what we were looking for. And then additionally, some other things. For instance, like that Miro board, that's not common to a lot of these other tools. But that eliminates the need for a Miro subscription if that whiteboarding tool is native to this operation.
Great point. Anyone else have any questions for Khadijah on the tools that were shared for the day?
Yes, hi everyone. I have a question. Have you had an opportunity to utilize Microsoft Teams?
To communicate or to manage projects?
I believe if there is a limited version to manage projects, but to communicate that has like similar to Slack in a sense.
Yes.
where I find that a lot of the companies, they utilize Microsoft Teams because it comes with a package. You're able to use different things with the Microsoft Suite, and that comes with it. So I wanted to make sure if there's anything that we could use with the versions that we have with the company. I don't know if you had any experience with that.
Thanks for your question, and that's a great call out actually. Maybe let me know if I'm saying this right, but I want to say Nakia. Naquaya, sorry. So thank you for your question. Yes, I have experience using Microsoft Teams. It's actually, my preference here is Slack. I feel like it has a few more features for communication and document sharing and integrations. But to your point, because Microsoft Teams comes with that Microsoft suite, and most companies are Microsoft shops, it is integrated. And while it's not Slack, it is still feature rich. What you can do with Teams is you have that ability to do instant messages, group chats, you can do video conferencing. Teams actually sits on SharePoint, so the file sharing is pretty extensive there. You can build out entire websites that are interactive because of that SharePoint functionality. So a lot can be done there, but in my personal experience, if I'm using Teams to manage a project, basically it's like my document repository at best. I'm communicating in other ways. If Teams was my tool, I would probably be building a lot of things out to share on Teams in something like Microsoft Excel or PowerPoint to kind of illustrate my point and tell my story.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Hope that answers your question.
Great question, actually. Very good question. And then Marcus mentioned Microsoft Office Planner is a tool they have. I have to look into that. I've never heard that one before, but
it's like a personal to-do list, Microsoft Planner. It even comes with, I just saw it in the Android store, like there's an app for that. But it seems like if you're into, I would put it like with OneNote, honestly. It's like OneNote is like a journal. So Microsoft Planner is like more of a project tool. But I guess if I'm putting them in the context of this presentation, Microsoft Project is like the Jira, and Planner is like the Trello.
gotcha. The other question,
You gave
Corey?
it a Trello. I don't know if I would give Planner a Trello, but okay.
It's not on par, but like as far as big step, little step, smaller step, for sure. Good call, Corey. It's not all the way up to Trello, no. It's a glorified to-do list. It's not Google Keep, you know. It's in that lane. It competes with Google Keep is more appropriate.
Any other questions for Khadijah? Please feel free to come off mute. Oh, and I didn't know Asana and Smartsheet integrates with Teams. Well, actually, no, I knew about Smartsheets. I didn't know about Asana. That's interesting.
Well, that's the thing is like what I see looking around is they don't typically list one or two of a type of integration. When they're talking about communication tools, it won't just be Slack. It'll be Slack, Gmail, Microsoft Outlook, Teams. They'll try to get the whole like vertical, basically. So learning as they grow their client base and learn from their managed services, they add those things into their functionality.
Interesting. Okay. Anyone else would like to ask Khadijah before we end the call or conclude? Okay. Well, Khadijah, thank you so much for putting together an amazing presentation. I know we finished a little bit early today, but that doesn't matter. You gave a lot of information for everyone to take back with them to learn. Please share where people can reach out to you in case they have any questions.
Sure thing. For now, I have on screen my LinkedIn. Honestly, I don't mind if you send me a message. Just please don't be heartbroken if I don't respond immediately. I also see Bill in the chat. I'm not sure if there are other ATPs in the house, but if you're not already a PMP, there are resources within our chapters. I did see a big showing from, I want to say Lake Worth, when everyone was putting where they were from, checking in. So thank you guys for joining us. If you're not local to the South Florida chapter, So back to this, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a message. We'll also be figuring out how to share with this group the presentation. I'll make sure that I make a mention of which tools have the ability to use AI to help you guys flesh out project plans. That's an awesome consideration to build into this. And then there was also one of these slides that had a fuzzy visual. So I'll make sure I clean that up before we share it out. And with that, thank you so much for your time and attention, for your amazing questions, your participation, and being patient to save the questions for the end. Thoroughly appreciate all of that.
Yes. And thank you everyone for joining. As I mentioned again, please, if you're planning to or will be in town, please look out to register for our end of the year gala. And thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.